The Confederate flag wavers have wanted this war since their racist daddies taught them about the War of Northern Aggression. The Bible beaters have wanted this war since Billy Graham was their prophet, but they believe it's millennia in the making. The gun nuts have wanted this war ever since their guns became their best friends. Trump did not discover MAGA culture. He simply gave it what it wanted: attention through conflict. Trump became their king by becoming their voice, and he used that voice to bring about America's third great civil conflict. While I spent last essay arguing that appropriately placed blame within an organization can serve as problem identification for leaders of that organization, I'm going to spend this essay on the much more widely used side of blame: misplaced blame. In the case of Trump's GOP, we're talking about intentionally misdirected blame by MAGA's propaganda machine. Hey, America, your life doesn't suck because you suck. Your life doesn't suck because the free market system is broken. Your life sucks because of those black, brown, Muslim, gay, trans, weirdos, freaks, and geeks taking your jobs, committing crime, and messing with your kids' heads. That is what MAGA's message to America has grown into since Trump invoked xenophobia as the foundation of his entire political existence a decade ago. He started with just hating on immigrants, but over the last 10 years, MAGA has grown to become bigger, bolder, and more ubiquitous than ever. So much so that brown xenophobia has essentially become normalized. Recently, Chuck Schumer capitulated to conservatives on the budget when he had a perfect opportunity to make sure the American public knew whom to blame if the government were to shut down. Schumer, naturally and predictably, took the coward's way out. What establishment Democrats such as Schumer and Jeffries seem to be in denial about is that America today is indeed in the midst of a civil Cold War that began when Trump won in 2016, went hot on January 6th, 2021, cooled off while Biden was in office, warmed up again for the 2024 election, and officially went hot again when Trump began his second term only a couple of months ago. Hard to believe it was only a couple of months ago, right? Steve Bannon, Trump's original Goebbels, has been calling MAGA an instrument of war since its inception. Stephen Miller, Trump's young Goebbels, has been a general in this war, particularly focused on attacking immigrants. Elon Musk, Trump's current alpha Goebbels, is helping Trump deconstruct the administrative state just as Bannon proclaimed MAGA would. Bannon, Miller, and Musk, comprising the propaganda wing of Trump's inner circle, proves that both the leaders and the followers of Trump look at American society's current internal conflict as a war. A lot has been said about war over the millennia, but one fairly obvious observation I'd like to make about war is that when someone goes to war with you, you have no choice but to go to war with them. When Hitler invaded Poland with Nazi tanks, the Polish didn't even have tanks to fight back with. The Polish had to resort to cavalry. They lost. They knew they were going to lose, but they still fought. What's going on in America today is not a war because it should be. It's a war because conservatives made it one. I know Both liberals and progressives hate war, and I do too. But if Marx was right about history repeating itself, there's some hope to be had about where this war will take place, how it will be waged, and who will be doing the fighting. Marx's full quote is, "History repeats itself, first as a tragedy, second as a farce." The Civil War repeated as a tragedy in the form of the Civil Rights Movement, because while that movement was clearly culturally successful, history has proven its political success to be limited and not strong enough to make America even close to a fair and equal society, especially along racial lines. We are currently living in the second repetition of the Civil War, the farce. A reality TV game show host is our president for not the first, but the second time. That is absurd, comical, and tragic all at the same time. It's pretty easy to call Trump 2.0 a farce. Here's what might be the good news. The Civil War was fought by soldiers. Civil rights was fought by citizens. MAGA's war on government will hopefully be fought by politicians, primarily in DC, but in other state capitals as well. If we are to avoid citizen versus citizen conflict, both liberals and progressives must start to look at Washington as the Roman Colosseum for at least 2 generations, and encourage the rest of America to look at our nation's capital the same way.
I think he knows what Rome is. Rome is the mob. Conjure magic for them and they'll be distracted. We take away their freedom and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum. You'll bring them death, and they will love him for it.
Some politicians are already fighting this war, Bernie Sanders to name my personal favorite. Some politicians are cheering from the sidelines or rafters. Many establishment Democratic Party leaders, however, aren't even in the stadium because they're in denial about the war in the Colosseum even happening. These essays comprise my personal effort to suggest how the Democratic Party can evolve into a more politically competitive group of leaders by shedding the baggage of its last 32 years of neoliberalism, so that it can finally embrace what it stood for 80 years ago: progressive, structural change. If historical political patterns hold and the country does indeed continue to spiral into the seventh circle of hell, the 2026 midterm elections, followed by the 2028 presidential elections, will constitute the biggest swing to the left America has seen for at least 20 years, maybe even 50 years or more. From now until then and on into the next 20 to 40 years, the progressive left must become the driving force of the Democratic Party so that we can destroy the intellectual and social credibility of conservative politics in America once and for all. If we leave that responsibility to establishment centrist Democrats, the country will be right back in a state of deterioration in 1 or 2 election cycles, because the American public will be reminded of the Democratic Party's overarching national branding problem: Democrats don't deliver.